Welcome to The Point. I'm Marcia Kramer. We're getting right to the point with a man who wants to be New York City's next mayor, Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams. He served in the NYPD for 22 years, retiring as a captain. He then began a second career in politics. Let's get the point of view from the son of a butcher who now doesn't eat meat. Borough President Eric Adams, thank you for joining us today. I bet you never got an
I love that. I love that. I love that. You know, we're color coordinated.
No, we're color coordinated, but I bet you didn't expect to get into like that.
No.
A lot of introductions. But here's my question to you. You do want to run for mayor. What is your campaign going to be based on? What arguments are you going to make to get New Yorkers to vote for you as opposed to all the other people who want the job?
I think the transformative period of the time, even when you look at the coronavirus crisis, what do we need for the 21st century? And we need to be clear on that. And I think far too often people believe we need an accountant. No, you need someone with a full scope of experience who's going to answer that call when a plane flies into a building. The gap between 1993 and 2001, sleeper cells are still out there. Who's going to deal with the city not going back when you look at bail reform and some of the things that are taking place in the city, the quality of life, the transformative needs of this city?
Well, how would you assess Bill de Blasio's term as mayor, and how will Eric Adams as mayor be different?
I'm going to draw on that experience of my law enforcement experience. We had a dysfunctional crime fighting apparatus. I went into the police department as not only a crime fighter, but a computer programmer. Many people don't know that. I was part of those original real-time crime fighting apparatus.
CompStat?
Yes, I do, very much. OLTPS was the precursor to CompStat. I believe our city must run in real time. You cannot continue to have an annual report of what happened in the city. We must move to a real-time governing model.
So how would you compare Mayor de Blasio's relationship with the NYPD to the relationship you would expect to have if you were mayor?
You can speak with any of the police unions, and they'll tell you that Eric understands law enforcement. It's the precursor to prosperity. It's the foundation. The city must be safe. And if we don't look at some of the things that we are doing that's hurting our public safety, then we can go back to those dreary days. Marcia, I don't want my son growing up in the city I grew up in, and I don't want other families to experience that as well.
So are you saying that you won't have unions like the Sergeants Benevolent Association declaring war on you the way they declared war on Bill de Blasio?
No, they would not. I understand our police officers should be treated with the level of respect they deserve. They should not be making $35 an hour less than the neighboring counties. They should be treated with the level of dignity. We just had 2 suicides, the amount of pressure that our officers are experiencing. At the same time, we're going to hold them to a level of accountability, but we need to ensure that they're paid a decent salary, they're given an atmosphere where they're respected, and they're not going to turn their backs on me. They're going to walk with me to keep this city safe.
That seems like a backdoor criticism of the way Mayor de Blasio is getting along with the NYPD.
We just have a different style. There's a difference when you wore bulletproof vests and stood on street corners and protected children and families. You have a different relationship. I responded to the calls of service. I'm alarmed and concerned when you see a 35% increase in robberies over the last 2 months, an 18% increase in burglaries, and a 16% increase in our major crime categories. That alarms me, and I'm concerned about that.
You know, one thing I'm curious about, Bill de Blasio ran on a platform of ending stop and frisk, but when you were a police officer, did you have to enforce stop and frisk, and how did you feel about it?
Use it often. Great tool. We should never remove stop and frisk. That's not what it's about. It's using it correctly. We were overusing it. We were looking at stopping almost 1 million black and brown boys in this city at the height of the use of stop and frisk. Former AG Elliot Spitzer stated 1 out of 4 of the reports were actually documented. And so let's use the tool correctly. I used it as a law enforcement officer. I supervised officers who use it. It's a great tool, but it must be used correctly.
So you think we never should have ended it?
No, and we have not ended it. If you look at what Commissioner Dermot Shea is doing, he's using it the right way. The Supreme Court gave us the method on how we should use it. Let's make sure we're using it the right way.
So in the days of Michael Bloomberg, it was used a lot, and he argued at the time that it was necessary to get guns off the street. But now he's apologizing for it. I wonder how you feel. Was he right to apologize, wrong to apologize? Was it the right tool at that time and not the right tool now? Your assessment?
I believe he was right to apologize. And when I went into policing with so many combinations, I was a civil rights activist, and I believe that we can make this city safe without people living in disgrace. And I think that it was the overuse. He trusted Commissioner Kelly. There was a desire to make the city safe, but that tool was really abused. And when I was in the state Senate, I was able to team up with now Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, where we passed a bill that didn't allow the police department to keep a database of innocent people, did no crime at all, but just because they were stop and frisk.
But when you walked down the street as a police officer and you saw somebody with a gun or with a bulge in their pocket, what was your reaction?
That's what the stop and frisk tools allowed you to do. It allowed you to speak to that person, question them. If your suspicion heightened to the point that you felt that they were doing something suspected of committing a crime and they had a bulge, you was able to touch that area, not search unless you felt, and it escalated to another level. What we were doing in the city, we would stop young children. We were telling them to empty their pockets. If we found marijuana in their possession, we then charge them with additional crime. If it's in public view, you can actually be arrested for it. We created that.
So was that a good policy or a bad policy?
Bad policy. It was a bad implementation of a good policy. I encourage officers now to use the policy the correct way. Great policy, implemented in the right fashion.
Well, you're the borough president of Brooklyn, where there has been an increase in shootings and I guess youth-on-youth crime, because you have a lot of young kids who seem to have guns and want to shoot each other. So is that a good policy to be using in your borough in certain areas right now?
And it is being used. It's being used correctly. I think Dermot Shea is doing an effective tool to do it. We have serious problems in gangs in the city, and I think many of those gangs that we're seeing sprout out throughout the borough of Brooklyn and the city of New York is due to the loss and lack of opportunities for young people. We have a failing school system that when you match those who are in gangs with the number of young people who are not receiving adequate education, it feeds our gang problem, it feeds our crime problem. Think about this for a moment, Marcia. 80% of the men and women who are on Rikers Island at the time they get there don't have a high school diploma or equivalency diploma. 18% of our 18-year-olds read below a 5th grade reading level. A third of them read below a 5th grade reading level. 55% have a learning disability. Because we're not dealing with our educational opportunities, we're feeding the crisis. The goal is not to close Rikers Island. We need to close the pipeline that feeds Rikers Island.
So changing topics, I wonder how you feel about CHIRLANE McCray thinking about running for your job.
That's such a, somehow there was a news story that Bill de Blasio and I sat down with CHIRLANE McCray and there was a trade-off for endorsements. That never happened. I never thought I would be quoting Donald Trump and saying fake news. That is fake news. We never met.
Do you think that she's qualified to be borough president, that being the mayor's wife is a qualification for the job that you now have?
I believe CHIRLANE has done a good job in bringing up the issues around mental health.
Is that a qualification for being borough president?
I don't know that. The people of the borough must decide that. I have one vote. I have one vote, and I have to determine that. And I have, if my goals are correct, I have my own strategy of trying to meet as many voters as possible.
There's a lot of people who want to run for that job.
Yes, Robbie Carnegie for one, Antonio Reynoso another, and many other names are coming up. Yes, there's many names that are coming up. So it's going to be her job to convince the voters that she's going to bring a holistic approach to really improve on some of the things that I did as the borough president of Brooklyn.
That's a tough job. So would you thinking of would you endorse her or one of the other wannabes, or you're holding your powder?
Meeting with all of them and sitting down and hear. I want to hear what they're going to do with my Bellevue project. For the first time in America, we have a program at Bellevue Hospital that's disease reversal. Just imagine that, you know.
What you did with yourself.
Exactly. You know, diabetic, lost my sight in my left eye. The doctor said I was going to be blind in a year. I had permanent nerve damage. Which is why
the butcher's son doesn't eat meat.
And just those are the types of program I want to continue. What are we going to do about the mental health issues and using methods that have proven correctly to use? And so I want to hear what are the things the next borough president is going to do to continue the success that I believe we have accomplished in Brooklyn.
So talking about mental health, how do you feel about CHIRLANE McCray's Thrive program? There's been a lot of questions raised about whether the money is actually going to the right places.
I think we need better metrics. I believe it was unfair what Scott Stringer did a few days ago, where he stated that they didn't turn over data when he's well aware that there's time to turn over the data. They're meeting the benchmarks. But when you look,
it's politics?
Yeah, it's clearly politics. You know, you can't just look at those things that are popular in the media and then you make the decision to attack someone on it. I think we could do a better job with Thrive. I believe that we need to commend the First Lady for raising this issue, but clearly I believe that mental health is a wide range of issues that people are impacted on, and I think there's some things that we can do that's outside the box.
Like?
Number one, looking at our various civil servants. Our civil service employees are experiencing something called vicarious trauma. We think about every day, all day, you are experiencing the trauma of people. But when you go into the atmosphere, what are we doing for those police officers, EMS employees, teachers? You know, how do we deal with their trauma, teach self-care, allow moments of meditations inside our employees, being able to identify trauma. We need to become a trauma-identified city like they're doing in other cities.
Have we failed when it comes to police suicides?
Yes, we have. We have not done enough. As I presented and with the PBA, we need to look at areas around how do we deal with trauma and give police officers self-care. And it's not only what
Don't you think that police officers feel that if they come forward that somehow they're going to be punished, that there's not a real acceptance of a police officer having a mental health issue and they're afraid to explain exactly what's going on?
Yes, yes. And
how do you bridge that?
And I recall when I left policing, Marcia, how I didn't know I was experiencing PTSD, not only from the daily interaction with those who break laws, but some of the stress of policing. I mean, sure. You've carried me, you followed some of the things I did for years. And until we change the culture of that, by you coming and seeking and receiving help, you're not going to be stigmatized. We're never going to have the impact that we wanted. That's why I put out a video, one shot, to show what it is to go and seek the help that you need.
Hate crimes are a big problem in the city, in the country, and especially in Brooklyn.
Yes.
I know that you have some ideas about how you can bridge the gaps and the distrust. Maybe you could tell me about it. Double-digit
increase. When you look at some of the actions where many people who were not only from the LGBT community, but the Hasidic community and other communities were attacked, we're doing a program called Breaking Bread, Building Bonds, 100 dinners across the city, 10 people at each dinner. Each one come from a different ethnic group so that they can start having a conversation with each other. It's amazing, a place like Brooklyn where 47% of the people speak a language other than English at home, how we don't know each other. We don't speak to each other.
Who moderates these, and how do you bring people together? How do you get people to understand their differences that could have commonality?
Yes, great question. The moderator is the person who's opening their home or who's hosting the dinner. We have close to 200 people who have signed up through our website to host a dinner. We have close to 400 people who are participating. We had about 10 dinners already. The conversation is exciting, and we're allowing it to flow and just having people for the first time ask questions. Why does a Sikh person wear a turban? Why does an African American is doing certain things? Just that engagement in that conversation, it has been unbelievable for the first time that people are talking to each other.
Instances of anti-Semitic attacks in Brooklyn haven't gone down.
No, they haven't. And it's going to take a time for us to start saying that we're not going to tolerate people being attacked merely because of their religious belief.
The reason why there's so many more in Brooklyn is because people, many are visibly Jewish. They wear a garb that's very identifiable. They have certain hair, it's called. Do you think that that's why it's so much more there, because it's easy to identify these people as being Jewish?
Yes, I do. And
how do you bridge that?
When you see,
you're not going to tell them, you know, shave your payas, don't wear your religious garb.
And you shouldn't. When you see an attack on a Hasidic person in Williamsburg or Borough Park, other parts, they're not only attacking that individual, they're attacking the symbol of Judaism. They're attacking a Jewish person. And we need to be honest about that and not ignore that. The same if you see another ethnic group that's being attacked. And the only way you can change that is to engage in a real conversation and then restorative justice. Those petty crimes of drawing a swastika or a serious action, but a lower crime on the criminal procedure law, have them come in the room and talk to the person. Young person draws a swastika and is not aware of what that swastika represents, what it means. That is not helping the problem. And that is what we're hoping to do with our conversations that we are embarking upon.
Eric Adams, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
He wants to be married. He's going to come back early and often to be on the show to tell us all about his campaign.
Looking forward to it.